What we typically refer to when we say illusion is the illusion of the separate self. Many people in the past and today, within the spirituality realm, speak about the illusion of the separate self, the illusion of reality, or the dream state. And the whole purpose of spirituality and its practices is to awaken from this dream. Very much like when we are sleeping and dreaming, when we wake up into this waking reality. And the same way there is the transition of waking up from the sleep dream state to waking up. There's also a transition in this reality. There is also a dream state or an illusion that we can wake up from. And then when you are walking this spiritual path, many people also face difficulties. They face obstacles and they struggle to realize that there is this illusion. And they always wonder, how do I wake up from this illusion? And so I wanted to touch upon this because I feel like rather than focusing on the illusion itself, which seems to be like an external frame that has been placed upon us, it's better to root back into that which is recognizing whether there is an illusion or not to begin with. When we go back to square one, the knowing, the consciousness, the underlying state of being, that is there regardless of whether you are in an illusion state, in a dream state, or if you are hypnotized, there is always going to be this underlying knowing, which is also prevalent and present at all times, even in a dream state while you're sleeping. And so when we root back to this and understand the nature of this knowing, the nature of consciousness in itself, naturally all else falls away. Anything that is not true to consciousness, to the purity of being, anything that is not true to that will eventually subside and fall away naturally. But all in all, when we are speaking of the illusion, we are talking mostly about the story which we live by, the story that has been accumulated over time. Who am I? And when you really look within and ask yourself, who am I, you'll see a particular story. A story is really a simple way to describe what's going on. And you may say, no, this isn't a story, this is real life. I have a job, I am an engineer, I have children, I follow this religion, or I don't follow a religion, I have goals. Now that in itself, when I refer to this as a story, it does not mean I'm trying to undermine this, and it also doesn't mean that I am trying to disregard this. All we are trying to do is to just understand this. As we understand this, we also transcend it. For as long as we think we are the story, we are the job, the occupation, the career, the children, the religion, and all of that which we have accumulated, for as long as we believe we are the accumulations in life, we will always be entangled and not be able to discern that there is a purity of consciousness, that there is pure consciousness that is free from all stories. Stories are also ever-changing. We as human beings, we are looking for something that is permanent, that is everlasting. And so anything to do with this story, with this accumulation, we know is ever-changing. What you are today, you may not have been 5-10 years ago. And so bringing our attention to this is as a form of reflection, a form of introspection, where we are able to look at this story, see its dynamics, see how this story is constantly changing, and realize that, hey, even though 5 years ago I was on this particular chapter of the story where I am trying to study and get a degree, now where I am working and I have this particular profession, there is still that which is knowing of whatever chapter or stage you are on the story. And that is the consistency we are actually looking for. That is the consistency that is the truest state or the truest sense of being. Yes, on paper, you may have all these credentials, you may have a sort of, a set number of information on your identity card, your age, your height, your place of birth, and so on. These are all these are all information that we don't want to identify with. Because as we identify with this information, then all of life is based and seen through this information. All of life is based and seen through the story's narrative. Whereas if we allow ourselves to recognize that this is just a story, and any other human being is also living by a particular story, naturally what starts to happen is, okay, then what am I? What is this thing that is always knowing? What is... You turn inward and start to rest in your state of being. You start to rest in the purity of consciousness. And so now at this point, if you are able to just be, regardless of your credentials, what happened yesterday, 10 years ago, the trauma, the hardships, the beautiful moments in life, these are all happenings that are taking place. The moment we latch on to one of these happenings, or value one particular memory more than another, or value a particular idea, belief system more than another, what then happens is that reality becomes skewed and warped to shape these moments, these memories, belief systems, or ideas that we are valuing more. You've heard the saying where if you are a hammer, you see everything as a nail. This is it. This is really the best saying to describe what is happening here. And so it's absurd to purely define reality based on what we are identified with. If we are identified with an idea that has been picked up along the way of living life, it's absurd that our entire reality is... It's absurd that we are happy with the fact that our entire reality is shaped by that idea. And so now you may wonder, okay, what do I believe in? What shall I do? I can't just be nothing, right? Well, regardless of whatever you think you are, there is always this nothingness. There is always this stillness. You could have achieved all your goals and lived the best life and have beautiful memories, or whatever memories you may have that have shaped you. The truth is, there's always this stillness and nothingness that is present. It's in the underlying knowing of life. Today, my background is engineering. I studied engineering at university. And when I introduce myself, I might say I'm an engineer. I do engineering. But tomorrow, if I decide to get a degree in English literature, then I might say, hey, I am now a writer, or maybe a journalist, or something like that. Regardless of how the story changes, how the identity changes, there is always that consistency, which is knowing of the change, which is observing that change. That's who you are. It's free from the story. That's where we are resting in right now. It was there yesterday, it's here now, it will be there tomorrow. But that's all it really is. And as we rest in this, reality is not warped by any aspect of the story. And so when it's not warped by any aspect of the story, this is where the illusion of the separate self falls away. This is where we wake up from the dream state and realize, hey, I am not thoughts which are just mere objects. These thoughts and ideas, belief systems, memories, they're just objects. They have a boundary that is defined within space, if you like, just like a water bottle, a cup, a pen. But it just so happens that we value these ideas, and that's where we warp ourselves into thinking that there is some sense of separation from ourselves and everyone else. But no, if we rest in this being, we recognize that everything is resting in that being. When we rest in this consciousness, we recognize that everything is consciousness, and it cannot be anything else. If it is anything else, it's absurd to make that claim, because if I say that the truth of life is this particular idea, it wouldn't make sense, because in order to recognize that truth of life, there has to be that underlying consciousness which is more consistent than any truth. This is Hassan from the Spiritual Walks. We are all on the journey towards the truth. If you really enjoyed this video, feel free to have a look at this one, and maybe up here actually. But I'd love to hear back from you, and see you on the next one.